So next up is we're going to talk about something that is a lot more challenging and widespread on Long Island than I ever imagined. So this is Sonny Corrao and Mark Pastore from New York City Parks. They're going to talk about monitoring breeding birds of prey in this area, the New York City area, to inform pest management in New York City Parks. And just a note, that was just 2 years ago, I was doing an otter survey out at Big Reed Pond, Montauk County Park, and found a dead bald eagle underneath its nest. And it was incubation time, so I collected the specimen, had no marks on it at all, and sent it up to Kevin Hines. And it was up at the Wildlife Pathology Unit. And it had died of anticoagulant rodenticides in Montauk County Park. Now, they do range a bit, but they wouldn't have ranged very far, I don't think, from the nest. They're sort of territorial. This was in March, so yeah, a real surprise, but looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be invited. So I definitely thank Michael and CTALK for allowing us to come and share the work that we're doing. Alongside so many amazing presentations today, it really is inspiring, and I'm loving it that we're all doing our work in our little communities, right? Because we're all making it a better place for everybody. So yes, I'm Sonny Corrao, and my partner, Mark Pastore. Wait, give a wave, Mark, right? Mark does a lot of the work on this project. Where we're monitoring breeding birds of prey across New York City. But I'm going to start with a pop quiz, wake us up here a little bit after lunch. Can we name as a collective, and those in the breakout rooms, feel free to shout them out in your rooms. There are 9 species of birds of prey that commonly nest in New York City. Commonly meaning we'll find at least one nest a year. So let's just start shouting them out. There's 9 species. Red-tailed. Peregrine, great horned owl, screech owl and barn owl, American kestrel, Cooper's hawk. We haven't found a sharpshin, but they're probably there. We haven't found one. Osprey and bald eagle, yes, the story that Mike shared. Yes, so we have all 9 of those species every year breeding in New York City, which is fascinating. So let me set the stage and remind you, I don't know the last time you visited New York City, but as representatives of New York City Parks, we are stewards of 14% of the land of New York City. So that's over 30,000 acres. And it's not just of the natural areas you might be thinking of. It's playgrounds, it's beaches, it's community gardens, it's those recreational ball fields, right? It's all of these places. And our small team on the Parks Agency, we're here to make sure that all New Yorkers can coexist with these wildlife species beyond just birds of prey. But we're talking about the birds today. So as stewards of those spaces, maintaining healthy habitats for these animals, we got to know who's there, right? So knowing what is there, that's kind of the title of our talk. Knowing what's around, knowing what the activity that's going on can help us be better stewards of our properties. And you might want to say, so that's kind of how our Breeding Birds of Prey project grew. It was out of this notion of wanting to provide a better landscape for them. In this case, we want to reduce our use of rodenticide so that we can bypass that secondary rodenticide poisoning. So how does that help this, cute little guy? This is a juvenile red-tailed hawk, and like most wildlife, the hawk doesn't see these geopolitical boundaries that we put up there. So, New York City Parks can do as much as we can on our properties, but it's really about spreading this information further so that we can really just reduce this risk to the breeding birds overall. Because it's going to get its food wherever it can get its food, right? So as I mentioned, we have a practice now of suspending rodenticide in areas where we have active nests during the breeding season, because this is when the adults are hunting double time, right? They've got to feed themselves, they've got to feed their chicks. And the chicks are obviously much more susceptible to rodenticide or other pathogens when they're developing and growing. So what we do is we scout out, we find these active nests, we monitor them, Mark's out in the field every day during the breeding season trying to see what stages these nests are on. And with that, we send out that information to our operations team. And I will say, over the years, our maintenance team has done an amazing job of incorporating other pest management practices, besides just relying on the traditional standards, right? There are snap traps, but now we're using stuff called rat ice. Has anyone heard of rat ice? Or these machines called Burrow RX, right? Come find us after the presentation. We'll talk about these other novel methods that they're using, as well as just improving our waste disposal overall. That can do a huge amount. Last year, New York City finally made a rule to containerize our garbage pickup. That's amazing. Why, we got there. We got there eventually. So we can hope that little juvenile hawk will stay in our parks, but like I said, we know he's going to go out further away. And so we want to steward our own properties, but then that's why we're sharing this information with other agencies and recommending that they do the same. So initially this project was started by just a couple of parkies. There's Mark and another colleague out there collecting the information as part of their regular duties. But then in 2018, we were able to expand beyond Parks' ability, our geopolitical abilities, and we added a community science component. So here we are, last spring, we add in these like community building scouting days where we pick a day and we're all as a group together, we're learning about each other, sharing observations, and hopefully we're gonna find a nest, a new nest, one we don't know about. So we were very hopeful this morning. You can see our enthusiasm, our optimism that we're gonna find a nest in this green space. We didn't find one that day, but we did see a great kettle of, or a community of turkey vultures that were roosting on the trees and just doing behavior we don't really get to see that often. So we did have a nice learning moment. But most of the time, our community scientists are participating on their own, committing whatever time that they can to find a nest and monitor it weekly and send in observations to Mark so he can mark it down and we can send it out to the agency. So now, though, with this extra capacity, we can get even more cool data. So not only where stuff is being actively happening, but get milestone dates, right? When is stuff hatching? When are birds fledging, right? Is there going to be a temporal shift in that over the years? How many fledges are coming from the nest? So it's really exciting where we can go forward in the future with this. So we partnered with NestWatch. A show of hands, has anyone heard of NestWatch? Oh, great, a few people. So it's an application that's also housed under the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's expansive programming. And it is focused on monitoring nesting songbirds. But they did have an opportunity for us to list all of our birds of prey. So basically, we are sharing our data with NestWatch. This is just a screenshot of the app. And so we have a shared account where everyone who is part of our community science project can upload their observations. So, and what's great is like eBird, they have a map room. Ooh, you can go explore. So we really only use NestWatch for our more tolerant species. So those are the red-tailed hawks, the American kestrels, those that have a higher tolerance for like human activity. So this image I pulled up from the map room is 2025's edition of red-tailed hawk nests. And they had 58 across Canada, United States, and the very northern part of Mexico there. So it's great that the work that we're doing here can have like a larger impact across whatever Cornell's studies are doing. But let's get a closer look. You can see that nice little cluster there in New York City. Woo, look at that cluster. I would like to say it's mostly ours. So this map here is what we use internally through agencies and our community scientists. So I'll say, as a bunch of naturalists in this room, and we all want to be protective of our species, we're not going to show this far and wide, right? We're going to keep this information to ourselves. I don't want anyone posting this on their social media account, because we're trying to protect the nests of the more disturbed species. So we do have on there great horned owls, Cooper's hawks. We did have an eastern screech owl, yes. So this is what we saw last year. And what you should think about it is it's just a minimum. This is a minimum amount of nests that we saw. So there's some areas like southern Queens and Brooklyn here. It may not mean there's no nests. It's just we probably lack the capacity to monitor for them, right? We don't have anyone who's able to spend enough time there. And this we also did not, last year, we were not able to collect exact locations of osprey nests. Just we rely on some partners to get that. So the most common, this is our red-tailed hawk. So if you can see the colors, those are the red dots. And remember I said there were 58 nests in NestWatch? 37 of those were monitored by our team, which I think is amazing. Now this is what we send out to our maintenance teams because we did kind of like a lit review of the literature out there trying to understand territory size for red-tailed hawks. There's not a lot of active research in urban, like really urban environments like New York City. So using our best estimate and looking at the guidelines there, we came up with a 2-mile radius. You can see it covers a lot of our green spaces. So during the breeding season, if that nest is active, we're not putting out rodenticide, and we're hoping we're having a good impact on that. But let me go back to this map, because I told you we're collecting all that other interesting data of what's going on. So let's kind of pick it out a little bit. I think it's very interesting in our close urban environment, if we're talking about territory size, the close proximity of some of these species nesting to each other. So here, right there, that's a cemetery in Queens, and you'll see there's 2 dots right next to each other. So those were 2 red-tailed hawk nests that were within a 1/4 mile of each other. So these 2 pairs were obviously very tolerant of each other and were finding all the food resources that they needed. We also had last year, down in this Brooklyn green space, the 2 purple dots, those are Cooper's hawks. Now Cooper's hawks nests, if you're familiar with them, they prefer more of the forested environments, and they're very hard to find their nest. So we have a couple of very dedicated community scientists that found these nests for us, and it's amazing that they were able to find it. And then once the tree canopy leaves out, I mean, trying to get observations of them is near impossible. But these 2 are within a 1/2 mile of each other. So it's not even just between the same species that we're seeing this really close, small territory size. It's also between different species. Over here, again, in another cemetery, we had a red-tailed hawk nest that was active for 6 years. And then last year, we had a new visitor. We had a pair of bald eagles that decided to come in and nest in the middle of Brooklyn. So that's a first for the time that I've been working on this project, to have bald eagles in Brooklyn. So since bald eagles start their nesting season a little earlier, they arrived before the red-tails, and so now the red-tails show up and like, hey, someone's in my nest. Now we can't be 100% sure that it's the same pair of red-tails that had been using that nest previously, but less than a 1/4 mile, you see that red dot. In the same cemetery, there's a new red-tailed hawk nest. So it's interesting that this red-tailed hawk pair is okay with the bald eagle pair nesting right next to each other. They both kind of eat different things, right? The bald eagles are probably hunting out in the lakes and the rivers, and they'll just scavenge every now and then. So it's fascinating to observe. And then this other cluster over here in eastern Queens, great horned owl, eastern screech owl, and a Cooper's hawk, all within a 1/4 mile of each other. And it's also amazing to me because great horned owls are these apex predators. They'll almost go after anything. So this eastern screech owl and this Cooper's hawk are obviously able to cleverly avoid the great horned owl. So, and all those nests that I've just talked about are traditional support nests, is what I say, nests that you would find in a tree. But we are finding nests on human-made structures. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with the celebrity pale male. Pale male was a red-tailed hawk. That might have been the first documented red-tailed hawk in New York City, nesting on a human-made support structure. But he chose these very fancy digs on 5th Avenue, and he nested on top of that ledge there. And the nest was used for more than 2 decades. That's one of the young getting ready to fledge. And so now we're seeing more of these red-tailed hawks using human-made support structures. So is it former mates? Is it some of his progeny that have grown up on a building, so they think about using a building in different ways? Who knows? But it's not only ledges, it's light towers, it's fire escapes, it's interesting infrastructure. It's also sculpture elements. So the picture in the bottom right is of the Unisphere in Flushing Meadows Park, which was built for the World's Fair. And that nest has been reused for over 10 years. And what's interesting is they kind of hop around the globe. Sometimes they'll be off of Africa, sometimes they're in Mozambique. So they're moving around the globe. They're traveling the world in one spot, which is kind of interesting. So if we go back to those 37 red-tailed hawk nests that we monitored last year, or our group monitored, 14 of those run human-made support structures. So, and the adaptation is not just limited to red-tailed hawks. We're seeing kestrels, peregrine falcons, and the winged statue there has been used by both an osprey and a red-tailed hawk. They kind of go back and forth a little bit. So it's kind of fascinating how they're seeing our built environment. And because there's a lack of other traditional support structures, they're finding creative ways to continue to do what they need to do. So this is all to say, thank you to our community scientists that have helped us gather all this data. It's to inspire you where you work, to maybe find those passionate individuals in your area, to start maybe something similar, or at least increase the awareness of this activity that's happening right in your own backyard. I think the cuteness factor of little baby chicks is always a way to reel people in, right? We don't want to harm the juveniles, the youth of the world. So it's a great way to try and get those conversations started. There's legislature that's been kind of stalled in the state related to rodenticide, so do your own research, talk to your local elected officials, and see if there's a way that we can kind of slowly reduce our dependence upon chemicals, stuff like that. So this is just a small portion of our community scientists. We have a really robust group that participates with us every year. Last year, we had 68 community scientists participate with us, and 8 of those have been with us since the very beginning in 2018. And about 2/3 have returned from years to year. And so we're going to go back to our little juvenile hawk. Again, think creatively about how we can make our world safer for these birds of prey. How can you increase composting? How can you reduce food waste, right? All of this stuff is involved with waste or pest management. Now this guy, he's just wondering, should I eat that caterpillar or should I play with it, right? But yeah, look at the world in new ways and be creative and think about how we can do better for our wild neighbors. So thank you guys very much, and we'll take some questions. Yes, right there in the back. Yes.
It's more a comment than a question, but coming back to rethinking things, if it wasn't for the banning of DDT, we would not be looking at these birds right now in most cases. So we can do it. We've done it. We have to just be waking up Rachel Carson, right? Silent Spring was the banning of DDT. And now we're there again, revisiting with a new generation. So I just applaud these efforts. I'm a consulting arborist. I work in Manhattan. And the amount of birds, the increase of wildlife I'm seeing in my lifetime of working in the city is amazing. So I applaud everybody here in this room.
Yeah, let's give ourselves a round of applause. Everybody's doing the good work here, yeah. Oh, yeah, go ahead. You can do it. I'll let you choose.
Hi, I'm just curious, if we can't ban the rodenticide, can we put regulations on the boxes? They're often these black, indiscreet boxes. I even went so far to put glow-in-the-dark stickers. This is a rat poison box. Just curious what other angles we can do.
I think that goes back to be creative. What can you legally do? I guess it depends on who is putting the boxes out. Sometimes in the case of New York City, sometimes those boxes are traps and not poison. So maybe just do some investigative work beforehand and maybe talk to the person who put it out. A lot of people don't understand that rodenticides travel up the food chain. And it's not just birds, right? This can affect other mammals and stuff that live in your communities. So yes, and continue to be creative about it.
Hi, Brooklyn resident here. I believe I read some time ago that New York City was doing a pilot program of a contraceptive pellet for rodents, which they don't develop a resistance to, which they do, I believe, for some of the rodenticides. What happened with that? Was that at all promising?
You're talking about the fertility?
Yeah.
Though I can't speak specifically because that's a Department of Health project, but I think because New York City is such a buffet, the attraction to get the rats to eat that dose was not enough for them to eat the dose because they had so many other food options. So I think that was one stumbling block. But definitely go to the Department of Health. I think they have more information on that. Okay. Thank you guys so much. No, thank you.